Hello again, friends, and welcome to another edition of If This Car Could Talk. Today we detail the important work being done by the National Historic Vehicle Registry, all made possible with the significant support from the Haggerty Drivers Foundation. The registry has been very helpful in putting these 4 videos together with information and images. We hope you enjoy this look at the significant vehicles that tell the story of American history and our deep relationship with cars for many different reasons. Starting in 2013, the National Historic Vehicle Association was officially created with the goal to preserve and celebrate the stories of our nation's most significant vehicles. Because the Department of the Interior had already been spearheading the program we all know as the National Registry of Historic Places, they were the perfect partner. The goal is to recognize and archive significant historic automobiles within the Library of Congress. Each vehicle needs to meet at least one of the following criteria. First is the direct association with significant events and/or people, such as the first car to ever win the annual Indianapolis 500 auto race. Secondly, the vehicle must be directly linked to a person or group of people that can be fully documented. Thirdly, the vehicle must be of unique design and engineering. And finally, the vehicle must have an irrefutable link to American history and culture, even if it originated from another country. Once a vehicle meets these rigorous standards, a detailed report is written concerning every aspect of the vehicle. Then it's laser scanned and a professional photographer documents each and every detail of the vehicle. All these steps are necessary to be archived in the Library of Congress. Every April, the association hosts an exhibition called Cars at the Capitol, which brings a rotation of several of these cars to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. They're displayed inside a beautifully designed container that keeps them dry and secure, but fully visible from all sides. Of course, 24-hour security is provided for each vehicle on display. For most people, exhibitions like this is the only way they can see these significant cars at all. But here, they can really see them in all their grandeur. Once a vehicle is chosen for the register, doesn't mean all cars of the same year and model are on the list as well. In other words, the 15 millionth Model T is one specific car. Not every Model T is recognized. Currently, the National Historic Vehicle Register does not accept public submissions. There are currently 37 recognized significant vehicles in the registry. I'll briefly describe each one. Much more information is available online in the form of both written and video descriptions. If you have an interest in one, several, or even all of these vehicles, I encourage you to explore them further. Many have videos produced by the Register, and we've linked those videos below. In model year order, they are 1896 Benton Harbor Motor Carriage, National Historic Vehicle Registry, number 20. The particular example vehicle is one of America's earliest auto manufacturers, known as the Benton Harbor. This is a fine specimen because although it's been restored, it maintains most of its original components. It was designed and built by brothers Albert and Louis Boschke of Benton Harbor, Michigan. Like their contemporaries, the Wright brothers from Dayton, Ohio, they too were tinkerers and entrepreneurs with their Boschke Carriage Works Company. Technical knowledge was supplied by an inventor and engine builder from Chicago, Illinois, named William O. Worth. The trio intended to complete their new automobile in time for the Chicago Times-Herald motorcycle competition in 1895, the first organized races in the U.S. for cars and motorcycles. The car was never completed, so they developed it further into 1896. Progress was excruciatingly slow, so the brothers soon parted ways with Mr. Worth. The Boschke brothers never completed the vehicle, but Worth did and soon founded the Chicago Motor Vehicle Company and other various enterprises, where he went on to produce a handful of automobiles and he secured a few patents. Worth retained this Benton Harbor until the 1930s. It then changed hands a few times until it was acquired by David Calzo in 1981. After a long and tedious frame-off restoration, Calzo generously donated it to the AACA Museum in 1995. 1907 Thomas Flyer 460. National Historic Vehicle Registry number 12. Being one of several hundred new car makers in the U.S. in the early 1900s, Thomas Flyer was one that always had an outstanding reputation for quality and ruggedness. But it was more money than most Americans could afford for what at the time was still viewed as a luxury. In 1907, several manufacturers from around the globe proposed a race around the world. Of course, these cars spent a lot of time traversing the oceans. But once they got on land, conditions were harsh because of the unpredictable availability of supplies, fuel, oil, mechanical parts, and more in remote areas. Additionally, the quality of even the best developed roads were dismal at best. The Flyer would be the only American-made car to enter this competition, along with 5 others. 3 were never able to finish, while the other 3 successfully completed this monumental race in 169 days. That's nearly 6 months. Driven by both Montague Roberts and George Schuster, the 60 horsepower inline 4-cylinder 4-speed transmission with a double chain drive traveled more than 22,000 miles over and through extremely difficult and hazardous conditions. Both men needed to be excellent drivers, accurate navigators, skilled mechanics, competent cooks, and brilliant public relations figures. Loaded down with food, camping gear, supplies, replacement parts of all descriptions, and more moxie than 100 people have combined, their 1907 Thomas Flyer bested their nearest competitor by 26 days. Its victory made a profound impact on the emerging American automobile industry and brought worldwide recognition to the U.S. It's perhaps one of the most important automobiles in the history of the United States. Noted collector and casino magnate William Harrah purchased the car in the 1960s and soon embarked on a masterful restoration. It was decided that the car should have the appearance it had after winning the race in 1908. So he asked Disney set creators called Imagineers to patina the car to give it a just raced appearance. They sure put a convincing finish to this Flyer. The car is currently on permanent display at the National Automobile Museum in Reno, Nevada. A 1909 white Model M steam car, National Historic Vehicle Registry number 9. This 1909 Model M, manufactured by the White Motor Company of Cleveland, Ohio, was the first self-propelled vehicle ever purchased by the U.S. government for official use by the President of the United States. The car prominently features a 2-stroke double-acting steam engine under the hood and a steam generator under the front seat. The engine had an aluminum crankcase and a cast iron block. It used gasoline to run the burners for the steam engine. William Howard Taft was the sitting president at the time. Taft was said to be an early auto enthusiast, and he felt the president should have his own motor vehicle. The car was also said to be his personal favorite in the 2 years it was part of the White House fleet during his administration. Taft and his family often used the car for family outings, and he also used it around D.C. for official government business. Taft's extensive use of this car and many other motor cars during his term generally made the automobile the vehicle of choice in Washington, and encouraged many Americans to accept the motor car as something that would become a part of everyday life in less than 10 years. The white Model M was completely restored between 1969 and 70 and has been on display at the Heritage Museum in Sandwich, Massachusetts ever since. It remains in outstanding condition. 1911 Marmon Wasp, National Historic Vehicle Registry number 11. Because of the simple fact that this particular racer won the inaugural Indianapolis 500 race in 1911 already makes it a significant car. But its association with the engineer, airplane pilot, and race car driver Ray Harroun really earns it a special place in the annals of race car history as well as American history. Because this car had been raced quite extensively a few years before the Indy 500 by Nordic and Marmon, the parent company of the Wasp, many of the bugs had already been worked out. Even early on, manufacturers knew it was a great advertising tool to race their car in high-profile contests around the country to ingrain a solid reputation of performance, endurance, and safety for the general public. The adage, race on Sunday, sell on Monday, was certainly more than a slogan. It's said the Wasp was among the first cars to utilize a rearview mirror, which allowed Haroun a deciding advantage because he didn't require a passenger to watch the traffic behind him. 1918 Cadillac Type 57, National Historic Vehicle Registry number 4. This 1918 Cadillac Type 57 easily made the National Historic Vehicle Register for meeting and exceeding several criteria. First is its association to the history of its extensive use during World War I. This would be the first major conflict in which motorized vehicles would be used for the first time. It was originally sold by New York City Cadillac distributor Inglis M. Upperq to Reverend Dr. John Hopkins Dennison, a highly respected member of a wealthy Massachusetts family. The good Reverend was a beloved clergyman and scholar, serving congregations in both New York City and later on in Santa Barbara, California. Dennison was influential in the earliest days of the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, in New York. When the First World War shifted and the United States entered the conflict in late 1917, Dennison selflessly donated this car to the Y to serve as a support vehicle in Europe. He volunteered his services to drive and maintain the car during its service in Europe. Only days after Dennison took possession of the car, both he and his grand touring car were on a ship headed for France. This Cadillac was powered by one of the industry's first V8 engines, first seen in 1914 in a Cadillac Type 51. Additionally, the car exhibited all of the latest design and technological features at the time for the body, the chassis, and the drivetrain. It proved itself both in military testing and on the battlefields of Europe in real-world situations. These feats would make this Cadillac officially able to serve in the U.S. military, a first for an automobile of any type. Most amazingly, this is the only remaining vehicle that served the U.S. Armed Forces in Europe during World War I, and the only Cadillac to have ever done so. Not only did this Cadillac have an extensively documented war service record, it remains largely original even today. This Type 57 touring car officially served the U.S. from August of 1917 until 2 years later, in August of 1919. Following the war, Dennison returned home, but the car remained in France until Dennison went back to retrieve it. While in Europe, he toured the continent quite extensively. Eventually, he and his Cadillac returned home to the U.S. and toured all over the western part of the country. The car's fate during this time period is hazy at best. What can be confirmed is that in 1936, a well-known military memorabilia and surplus collector, Major M.C. Bradley, acquired the Cadillac and kept it until 1968. After that, the car exchanged hands several times to various collectors until its last sale happened in September of 2015 to Mark Lassen, who continues to be the car's honored caretaker up to the present day. 1920 Anderson 6 Convertible Roadster, National Historic Vehicle Registry, number 13. For about a decade, from 1916 through 1925, John Gary Anderson manufactured and sold his eponymous Anderson automobile. Based in Rockville, South Carolina, these cars largely used components supplied by other companies. But that certainly didn't prevent Anderson from engineering and developing innovative features not found in any other company's products. For example, the Anderson automobiles were the first to be delivered with floor-mounted headlamp dimmer switches, along with a full-power convertible top assembly. However, the bodies and interiors were largely of Anderson's in-house design, and because of their many bright two-tone color combinations, as well as incredible craftsmanship, has led many industry people of the time to consider the Anderson cars among some of the most handsome and cutting-edge designs available in the U.S. at the time. They were simply too expensive, something Anderson thought wouldn't be an issue for people seeking the finest quality. Although the Anderson came in a variety of different body styles, Anderson most notably built a car that was both a single-seat roadster and a 5-passenger touring car all in one. It was called the convertible roadster. A U.S. patent was issued for this innovative design in 1916. This body style was available from 1919 until 1922. Production reached nearly 2,000 units in the company's final year. In total, Anderson sold around 7,000 cars in their 10-year history. Very few survive today, and this particular example was originally purchased by a traveling lumber salesman from the Pacific Northwest. It was later traded between several notable collectors and was finally purchased by collector Paul Anario, who has returned it to its native South Carolina. This Anderson 6 convertible roadster remains largely original and has never undergone a complete restoration, only receiving repairs and cosmetic touch-ups on an as-needed basis for the past 105 years. Miraculously, this Anderson's original numbers-matching aluminum block and cylinder head 6-cylinder Continental 7R engine and running gear operate precisely as they did when the car first exited the assembly plant in 1920. A huge factor in the demise of the company was the fact that they were using aforementioned Continental-supplied 7R flathead 6 engines that failed more often than not due to warpage from intense heat, leading to a reputation of poor quality. Another culprit to the Andersons' demise was the economy of the southern states starting in the early 1920s because of the crash in the price of cotton after World War I. This was far ahead of the depression that would ultimately affect the entire country in October of 1929. Today, there are just 13 remaining examples of Anderson vehicles in existence. Along with its low production numbers and current survival rates, these cars are historically significant as the only small brand built in South Carolina and for their many innovative features. 1921 Duesenberg Straight 8, National Historic Vehicle Registry, number 27. Samuel Northrop Castle, a direct descendant of Hawaiian missionaries and later the founder of a Hawaiian sugar co-op known as the Castle and Cook Company, would be the first person to ever purchase a new chassis from a startup Indiana-based company founded in 1919 by two German immigrant brothers, Frederick and August, or Augie, Duesenberg. Because of production time, the custom construction of the coach-built body, and the distance to ship the car to the islands, this car was underway for over 2 years. But Castle, who was an early automotive enthusiast, agreed that it was well worth the wait. For a few years prior to selling their first car, the Duesenberg brothers became well known for their craftsmanship and engineering for such things as aircraft and marine engines for the war effort in 1917, bicycles specifically engineered for competition events, and hand-built gasoline-powered motorcycles and race cars. In 1919, the two looked to commercialize their concerns with two final ventures, both based in Indianapolis, Indiana. The Duesenberg Automobile and Motors Company was tasked with producing luxury passenger cars, and the Duesenberg Brothers Racing Team focused on competition cars. Both entities would utilize the ingenious and powerful inline-8 engine design that they had developed and perfected in the 1910s. The first chassis was equipped with a straight 8 engine displacing 260 cubic inches, good for 88 horsepower. The power was transmitted to a floor-shift gear-selected 3-speed manual transmission. The first model would soon be known as the Model A. It was known for using some of the finest components in the world at the time. Ultra-smooth power was accomplished through modern manufacturing techniques, efficiency and engineering such as an overhead camshaft design and a hemispherical combustion chamber. The most cutting-edge technology was used to design and build the chassis for this soon-to-be historic automobile. It used a 4-wheel hydraulic brake system, slowing down 23-inch wheels. The body was sent to a custom coach builder, entities that would work with luxury auto companies to produce bodies to the exact specifications that the customer requested during what is now known as the classic car era. After purchasing the chassis, Castle began working with an outside coach builder. In this case, Castle enlisted the services of a very fine company, the Bender Body Company of Cleveland, Ohio, to craft his new Duesenberg's custom body to his liking. Because Castle was over 7 feet tall, it's likely that he would have had a coach-built body constructed anyway, since most vehicles available at the time accounted for the height of an average man to be about 5'6" to 5'8". Due to his height, this unique coupe body the Bender company would create would feature a cavernous interior in height, shoulder width, and legroom. To fully integrate a cohesive design into this coupe, designers opted for cycle-like fenders leading into appearance, sans running boards. A full-length belly pan served two purposes. One, to conceal all the chassis components from view, and two, to serve as a way to streamline the car more fully. Aerodynamics led to increased speeds. Indeed, this was a most handsome car, befitting someone with wealth and taste like Mr. Castle. Castle went on to drive this 1921 Duesenberg straight 8 throughout the island nation. He drove this car many miles before he opted to return it back to Indiana, where the Duesenberg company had the ability to refresh and modernize the coupe aesthetically and mechanically. And that's exactly what was done. Upon its return home to Hawaii, Castle again drove it often, putting it to work in completing farm and plantation tasks. When Castle passed away in 1959, the words of his obituary fondly remembered him for his love of his expensive automobiles. Between the 21 Model A Duesenberg and his tan 29 Packard Boattail Speedster, locals remember this eccentric gentleman and his affinity for luxurious cars. After his death, the Duesenberg remained in the immediate family. Initially, it went to the States where his nephew, James C. Castle, would secure ownership in California. The car was largely in storage throughout the next 4 decades. When James Castle passed away in 1994, ownership was bequeathed to his son, James C. Castle Jr., and his wife, Saran. Though the Castles cherished the car, it was now nearly 75 years old, and had not always been shown the best of care. The Castles decided that a full restoration was needed, so they sought out a shop that could get it all done at a reasonable cost and in a short amount of time. After a 10,000-hour restoration by Canepa Restorations in California, the car was unveiled at the 2013 Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance to rave reviews. The Castles were now discussing the upcoming 100th anniversary of the Duesenberg Company, and they began looking for a permanent caretaker of this iconic motor car. Appropriately, in 2019, the Castles donated their beloved 1921 straight 8 Model A Duesenberg Coupe to the Auburn Court Duesenberg Museum in Indiana. It couldn't be in better hands, and it's serendipitous that the car has now come full circle. Well, that wraps up this week's look at the first 7 historically significant vehicles recognized by the Register. Which vehicle was your favorite and why? Have you ever seen any of them in person? Tell us in the comments. Join us next week as we look at the next 10 cars in the National Historic Vehicle Register. Thanks for watching.